I find it interesting. So the final rankings on 3, Vicari Swain, South Carolina's highest ranked guy, LaNorris second, then Marquis, who's sort of been up there as a top recruit, really on all the services for quite a while. It's kind of interesting to me if these two guys had been sort of as talked about throughout the process, or maybe as early or earlier in the process, I'm trying to say, these would be two guys I think Gamecock fans would have been just clamoring for to land. But because of how it played out, like you talked about with LaNorris getting hurt his junior year, really sort of being under the radar until he has this massive senior year. And Vicari as well, fans were, they were happy to get him. They were excited. It wasn't really until Deion Sanders started poking around and trying to steal him at the end that fans were like, wait, what? Well, what's the deal with this guy? So I think it's interesting, Charles, seeing the two highest ranked guys now kind of being a bit under the radar for most of the process, even in the eyes of South Carolina fans.
Yeah. And I think too, this is one thing that I think maybe factors in a little bit with them is they aren't from traditional powerhouse high schools either. And I think that could have maybe contributed a little bit. Like they aren't at high schools that have college coach foot traffic coming through just to check on guys. I'm not even sure if I've heard of Vicari Swain's high school, Central in Carrollton. I mean, Carrollton High School is a powerhouse, but I haven't heard of Central. So it's kind of weird that he wouldn't be playing at Carrollton. But yeah, I think that's a factor. And one thing too, like I said this last time, but we heavily value the senior season. I think that's a great indicator of just how good a prospect is going to be when they get into college. It's the most recent like data point sample size. And with Vicari Swain, I guess he moved up probably around 50 spots. I think he was around, just outside the top 100 going into this update. But as we continue to watch him, he's just awesome. Like I think you can see on these clips, and he can play multiple positions. I had one person who works for SEC team tell me he was his favorite player in the cycle period. So I mean, this guy is just twitched up like crazy. I think I might have mentioned this last time. His broad jump at the Atlanta Under Armour camp. I actually went back and looked it up for y'all. It was an 11.6, an 11.5. So just to give you perspective on that, Julio Jones, one of the best athletes at receiver in modern history, jumped an 11.3 at the NFL Combine. So Vicari Swain jumped an 11.6 in socks. So that just kind of gives you an idea of what kind of athlete you have on your hands here. Can do a lot of different stuff. I think it would be a 4-star receiver if he was just strictly a receiver with his ball skills and athleticism. But I think what makes him special is just that athleticism, the ball skills, and the fact that he has some toughness and can really be a game changer at secondary, in the secondary, at corner or safety. So, I mean, he could be like, this is kind of a weird corner class nationally. Like we only have 1 5-star. There's a group of kind of top 100 types. And I think if we were to slot Swain as a corner, he would be kind of right in that second tier group, kind of with your Cormani McLean's, Desmond Ricks's, Jakeem Jackson. So he would be in that vicinity. And he's as good of an athlete, I think, as all those guys, if not better. So a guy who I think you'll like Sellers, I think you'll look back and say, man, he probably should have gotten more attention. I mean, you see that hit right there. I mean, he's pretty vicious and physical. So yeah, I mean, it's just hard. Like his film is so much fun to go through. I mean, he's just extremely twitchy, bouncy. So he's a guy too. And I mean, y'all are definitely more up to speed on South Carolina's depth chart and whatnot than I am. But I would think he's probably got a shot. If he comes in and he might have a shot. He might be ready to contribute, or like he might maybe be in the mix there at spots in the secondary. So that should be fun to watch, at least like once he gets on campus.
Yeah, I mean, certainly receiver or defensive back, South Carolina would have some room for him and capable of playing either. And so that kind of leads me to this next question is also kind of more general, but also applicable to this, Charles. So you mentioned he's an athlete, right? That's how you rank him at On3, is in the athlete category. Plays both ways at receiver, DB. You mentioned he'd be highly ranked at either. How do you determine, okay, I'm slotting this guy as a receiver or a DB or an athlete, especially because some of these guys that are
say in the DB category, they do play oftentimes both ways at the college level. So how do you make that determination of this guy's going in the athlete category like Vicari?
Yeah, that's another really good question. So we try to, probably relative to other outlets, we try to project the actual position and not just lump everybody into athlete. For us, athlete is the kind of definition of an athlete is there's general ambiguity on what position he's going to play in college. Most of the time, for us, it applies also to he could play on either side of the ball. So I think with Swain, the fact he could play on both sides of the ball probably is why he's an athlete and not a corner or a safety. And also too, I think where they're recruited, typically we can kind of dig on and just asking college sources or kind of figure out, like, deduce where they're going to start off at in college. So that's a factor as well. But by the time we get to the end of the cycle, like this final rankings, we try not to have a ton of athletes, because I think it's helpful for the fans to know kind of where they're projected to play. And I think just from a product standpoint, it's just more accurate that way. And we aren't scared to project either. Like there will be some safeties that we think will outgrow their position and rank as a linebacker. Like, for instance, we had Nick Eman-Wari as a linebacker last year. And even though he plays safety at South Carolina, I think he could be like an Isaiah Simmons type who maybe starts off safety in college and eventually is kind of drafted as a hybrid safety linebacker. I can see that given how big he is, his size, and kind of what he brings to the table there. So that's kind of our general philosophy with athletes. And I think it helps too, like kind of how we go through our rankings process is everything starts off positionally. So we go through all the quarterbacks, all the running backs. So it helps us sort out the prospects just a lot cleaner if they're in a position and not just kind of a nebulous athlete category. So we try to pare it down, but I think we do have several athletes in the top 100. Like Nicholas Harbor's one. Like he's a good example of just could play tight end, could play edge. So that's kind of why Swain falls in there. But that's just our general take on it.